Welcome to the Commsverse. This session is called The Future of Intercompany Collaboration, and today will be presented to you by Tom Hadfield. Tom, the floor is yours.
Great, thanks so much, Sakharin. It's really nice to meet everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join. The topic of today's session is intercompany collaboration. That is collaboration between companies who are using different team collaboration tools. So my name is Tom Hadfield. I'm the CEO of Mio. We are an early stage venture-backed software company based in Austin, Texas. We have raised about $12 million from venture capital investors to tackle this problem that you see on your screen. It's the problem of walled gardens, and it's been pervasive in workplace communications all the way back to the early 80s, really, the early 1980s. In the modern day parlance, Microsoft Teams is a walled garden. Microsoft Teams users can communicate with Microsoft Teams users. But until we created Mio, it was not possible to communicate outside of Microsoft Teams with users who are using Slack or WebEx Teams or any of the other team collaboration tools. Walled gardens are a real challenge inside the enterprise because any friction for communication really leads to a loss of productivity and frustration on the part of end users. In fact, what you end up seeing is if a Microsoft Teams user can't communicate with a customer who is using Slack, then they will often register for a Slack account or access the customer's Slack workspace under a guest account, and you begin to lose control of your data. And so we think it's really important for enterprise customers to learn how to use Microsoft Teams to be used for communication with external business contacts in a way that is safe and secure and protects your data. Our vision for Mio is to create a new workplace communications network that connects every company in the world together on one unified network. So in this context, you might think of Microsoft Teams as the local area network. Right, so Microsoft will always deliver messages between Microsoft Teams users. It's the local area network. You might think of Slack as like the local area network, right? So Slack is always going to deliver messages between Slack customers. What Mio is building is the wide area network for workplace communications. So anytime a Microsoft Teams user wants to communicate with a colleague who is not using Microsoft Teams, then Mio can play a role in bridging that connection. I think it's just important to mention at this point that from a technology architecture point of view, the approach that Mio takes is API Federation, right? So maybe 20 years ago, the original approach to this problem was a multi-headed client like Trillion, for example, you might remember, or Adium in the early 2000s. And that was where you'd have to download a new client that would allow you to log into different messaging apps. And there are still some folks doing that today, like Friends, you might be aware of. So that was the old approach, multi-headed client. And then about 10 years ago, there was a real push towards open standards. And so Xmpp Federation became a thing. You may have used Nextplane 5 or 10 years ago in order to federate Skype for Business with Jabber, for example. And that was all based on open standards like XMPP. So the modern approach to interoperability is API Federation. And so all of the modern team collaboration tools like Microsoft Teams and Slack and WebEx Teams have mature APIs that allow you to basically replicate the functionality of one app inside the other and deliver a seamless experience for end users. So there are two use cases for Microsoft Teams interoperability that I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to spend the first part of the session focused on external federation. So this is how you can use Microsoft Teams to chat with your customers or your vendors or your partners or any external business contact who is using a different messaging app like Slack or WebEx Teams, for example. I'm then going to spend the second part of the session talking about internal interoperability. So this tends to be for larger enterprise customers who might have Microsoft Teams deployed alongside Slack or WebEx Teams for their internal communication. And so this is increasingly a problem inside large organizations. Our data shows that 91% of organizations above 1,000 employees have at least 2 messaging apps that coexist alongside each other permanently. And so we'll talk about that use case separately. But I'd like to start off by focusing on external federation. So Mio's external federation product is called Universal Channels. And the use case here is to think about, put yourself in the shoes of IBM. So IBM have, over a long period of time, consolidated around Slack for their internal communication. But when it comes to intercompany communication, for external communication, whenever they want to talk with American Airlines or Bank of America, they have to default back to email, because those companies don't use Slack. And so in order to communicate with American Airlines, a Microsoft Teams customer, they have to email them or set them up with a guest account on IBM's Slack workspace, in which case American Airlines, as a Microsoft Teams customer, is starting to lose some of its employees into external workspaces where they can no longer even have any visibility on the messages that are being posted, let alone handle data retention or DLP. So the goal is that American Airlines can stay inside Microsoft Teams and IBM can stay inside Slack, and they can communicate with each other in real time using the team collaboration tools that they both use. Another way to think about this is to observe the proliferation of chat apps inside large companies. And so what tends to happen is that even when an organization chooses Microsoft Teams as their primary messaging app, you'll end up finding that some employees install Slack so that they can join the workspace of their marketing agency as a guest user. Some of your employees will be joining WebEx Teams so they can communicate with a customer who might be using WebEx. And so Microsoft Teams continues to be used for your internal use, but your employees are going off and installing other messaging clients and letting your data kind of escape into other tenants and workspaces. So that gives you a sense of the problem that we're tackling. Your next question might be, well, how are we solving this? So for external communication, we've created a product called Universal Channels. And this is modeled on Slack's shared channels feature, but there are a couple of key differences, right? Obviously, they're cross-platform. So you can invite an external user to join a Mio universal channel, and they can join from Slack or from WebEx Teams, and you can stay inside Microsoft Teams. You have a channel that exists inside Microsoft Teams that you can post into and read messages in. They have a channel inside Slack that has exactly the same name that they can read messages and post into. And then we have a Mio app that is listening and posting messages on both sides, keeping those channels in sync between the Microsoft Teams tenant and the Slack workspace. The other key difference is that you can have unlimited companies inside a channel. And so you could, in theory, have a universal channel that had hundreds, if not thousands, of companies participating, and everyone could stay inside their preferred chat app, and everyone gets to stay inside their own tenant. So there's no guest accounts required. And so this Universal Channels product is the product I'm going to show you in this first part of the session. So we talk about seamless interoperability, and I just wanted to focus on what we mean by that. So what we mean by that is that you could have a Slack user inside a budget planning channel in the Slack client on the left-hand side, who could be fully participating in that channel with a colleague called Chris, who might be using Microsoft Teams, but neither user would know that the person they're talking with is not using the same messaging app as themselves. Right, and so it's seamless because the end user can continue their normal behavior and have the same user experience as if they were chatting with someone on the same platform as themselves. So Mio is invisible to the end user. That's our goal. You can upload files, you can edit and delete messages, you can do threaded replies, you can do an emoji, a thumbs up emoji reaction, And so this is the goal, is seamless interoperability. In the demo, you're going to notice that there are a few places where Mio is visible to the end user and where things aren't completely native. And that's just because of some API limitations in Microsoft Teams and Slack. And we're working with both Slack and Microsoft Teams to kind of bring full convergence between the two clients so that it can be truly seamless. These are all the features and how they compare between the platforms. You can upload files either in channels or in direct messages. You can do an emoji reaction, although if you do a custom emoji reaction on Slack, it will not translate into Microsoft Teams, but the basic set of reactions like thumbs up will translate across. You can do a threaded message, a threaded reply in one platform and it will show up in the other. You could delete a message in one platform, it will delete in the other. You can do editing, although that's not supported on WebEx Teams. If you post something in bold or italics, it will work on one side and come through on the other. You know, we can show the avatars of users, obviously. You can @mention users cross-platform, which is pretty cool. And we have support for private teams and channels as well. So today, Mio supports WebEx Teams, Microsoft Teams, and Slack. We also support Jabber if it's running in Teams messaging mode. And we are currently in the process of adding support for Zoom Chat and Ring Central over the next 6 months, with plans to add support for Skype for Business next year as well. So from a security perspective, the headline here, the most important thing for you to know is that Mio is not storing your messages or your files. So think of us as a piece of middleware that is piping the two APIs together. We're a cloud service, AWS hosted, and we're basically pulling messages from a Slack channel via the Slack API over HTTPS. We're decrypting the message, we're translating the format of the JSON structure of the message into Microsoft's format, and we're then relaying that message over the Microsoft Teams API, again over HTTPS. And so we're really like a piece of middleware that is translating and relaying messages in both directions. But we're not storing your messages or your files. SOC 2 Type 2 compliant, and happy to share the audit report under NDA. Our policy is to only ask for permissions and scopes that we need in order to be able to deliver these messages. So we want to basically be dumb pipes, right? We don't want to be inspecting your messages or transforming the content of your messages or your files. We're just translating and relaying in both directions. So I'm happy to post a security white paper into the channel after the call, and happy to set up a call with anyone if you'd like to get into this in more detail. We're adding some new features that will allow you to turn off some functionality like file sharing if you want to stop files from being shared outside your organization. So I'm going to move on to how it works. This is the Mio Universal Channels installation flow, right? So you are basically going to install the Mio app on either Slack, Microsoft Teams, or WebEx Teams. You can do this on the m.io website right now if you'd like to follow along. You pick your platform that you'd like to install the app on, and then you will receive a direct message from the Mio Universal Channels app in whatever platform you choose, either in Slack or Microsoft Teams. And you're going to click the Create New Channel button in order to create a new Universal Channel. You'll obviously pick a name for your Universal Channel. And once you've done that, we will generate a link, an install link, that will be available to you to share with your external customers or your external partners. They'll be able to join using that link. They'll be able to join the channel from their preferred messaging application. And from that point forward, your channel in your workspace will be connected with their channel in their tenant. And any messages posted on one side will be relayed to the other side. I'm going to show you a demo of that. In fact, I'm just going to switch my screens and and show you a demo. So this is the Commsverse channel in, she's going to share my screen here.
We can see your screen, Tom.
Yeah, great. Yeah, excellent. Yeah, I was just trying to find the chat window in Microsoft Teams. So, so this is the channel in Slack called Mio Commsverse, and you can see here there's a link which has been created. Anyone who goes to this link can now join this channel from their preferred messaging app. I'm going to choose WebEx for the purpose of this example because I can't show you the Microsoft Teams client while I'm using it. But you'll notice that the Commsverse channel now exists here inside my WebEx, and I can say hi from WebEx. We have an app that's sitting inside this space, listening to messages, and that message is then going to get posted across into the Mio Commsverse universal channels. You can see that I also earlier posted a message from Microsoft Teams. And did a threaded message from Microsoft Teams. A little bit confusing because I've got the same name on both platforms, but you can see that I have a little WebEx icon over my avatar to show you when the user is posting from WebEx. This user has a little Microsoft icon over the avatar to see that that message was posted from Microsoft Teams. And I can say hi from Slack, and that message will get posted across. So this is an example of a universal channel. Let me go back here to my. Oh, in fact, here it is. So this is what I was looking for. This is the Microsoft Teams view, where you can see that the message has been posted from Slack. This is the message that I posted from WebEx. This all just happened, a minute ago. And so any of you can join this channel. This is actually our live booth channel, which you can join from this link, which I'll post into the chat. So you can either join the booth channel inside Microsoft Teams. This is the Commsverse tenant, or if you would prefer to join from your own messaging app, then you can do that too. So this is my final slide in the first section of the presentation. I'm going to pause for a Q&A shortly before we move on to the other use case, which is for internal communication. But I just wanted to mention from a licensing perspective that Mio is a traditional SaaS offering. It's a freemium model. You can sign up today for free and create your own universal channel free of charge. And that will enable you to start using the product and see how it works. If you want to use this to be communicating externally with customers, you can sign up for the starter plan, which is $29 a month. We give you a free trial if you'd like to give that a go. That allows you up to 5 channels. And then beyond that, the professional plan is $199 a month that allows you to create up to 25 channels. And has some additional IT administrator tools that you may require. We also have some enterprise pricing, which I'm happy to discuss on a case-by-case basis. So why don't I pause there? And Saka, I'm going to pause for Q&A twice in this session. Once now regarding anything related to the external Federation product, and then we can do another Q&A at the end of the next section as well. But I wonder if anyone has any questions or any comments at this time.
We don't have anything from the audience right now.
Okay, no worries. Well, I would encourage everyone to post into the Q&A section if you have any comments or questions, and I will come back and do some additional Q&A at the end of the session. Okay, so regarding the second half of the presentation. So everything I just described to you was focused on external Federation with external business contacts who might be using a tool other than Microsoft Teams. The second use case, which we have a separate product for, is the internal use case. And this is when your company might be using Microsoft Teams and another tool like Slack or WebEx Teams in a state of permanent coexistence. And so where the two products are going to run alongside each other long term, right? There is no plans to migrate away from one to the other. Mio is invisible in this scenario, right? So the end user does not know that Mio exists, and the user experience for one user chatting to another user is exactly the same as if they're on the same platform as each other. As I mentioned, we're a cloud service. It's quick and easy to set up, AWS hosted, and it just works, right? The goal here is that you don't have to train your users to do anything differently. The approach that we have is called full synchronization. And so we will synchronize your user accounts between Slack and Microsoft Teams, so that if Tom, for example, is a Slack user, Tom can give Mio basically an API token that will allow us to listen to any messages sent to Tom on Microsoft Teams. And we will then route those messages to Tom on Slack so he can read them there. Chris is a Microsoft Teams user, but we will have a Slack user token for Chris so that if anyone can find Chris in the Slack directory and send Chris a message, but we will receive a copy of that message and we will deliver the message to Chris on Microsoft Teams so he can read it and respond to it from there. I'm going to show you how that works in more detail. In terms of channels, we also synchronize your public channels from one side to the other. So if you have a public channel called budget planning, we will create a budget planning channel on Microsoft Teams with the same name, and then we will have an app that sits in both the budget planning channel on Slack and on Microsoft Teams. And if someone posts a message into the Slack channel, we will repost that message into the Microsoft Teams channel so the Teams users can see it. And if anyone replies from Microsoft Teams, we will listen to that message via the API and we'll post it into the Slack channel. So in real time, so anyone can see it there. So we're basically creating a mirror image of each channel on the other side so that users can fully participate. The benefit of this approach, which we call full synchronization, is that now you can join your Microsoft Teams channels from the Slack directory. So you'll see here that you can browse your channels in Slack. All of your Slack channels show up, obviously, like they did before. But now all of your Microsoft Teams channels will show up in the Slack directory as well, because we've created them as a mirror image of the Teams channels. Similarly, when you go to the Channels tab in Microsoft Teams, you'll be able to see a list of not just your Teams channels, but all of your Slack channels will be listed there as well. So you'll be able to see the budget planning channel available inside Microsoft Teams. This is the direct messaging directory, user directory. And so again, you can find Chris listed in the Slack channel user directory on the left-hand side, but he has a little Microsoft Teams icon over his avatar. And that's what enables you to know that Chris is a Teams user. And if you send Chris a message on Slack, we will receive a copy of it because we have a token, an API token that gives us read-write access to Chris's account on Slack. And we will then deliver that message to Chris on Microsoft Teams. And this is what that looks like. So this is a direct messaging cross-platform between Slack and Microsoft Teams. So Tom inside Slack has found Chris. You see Chris's name highlighted in blue. Looks like any other Slack user. Tom sends a message saying, all right, talk later at the bottom there. We know that Chris is actually a Microsoft Teams user. So we receive a copy of the message that Tom sent from the Slack API, and we then post it into the Microsoft Teams direct message from Tom, right? So from Chris's perspective on the right-hand side, it looks like the message is coming from Tom, and so Chris can respond to it there. This is the budget planning channel that I mentioned, right? It was originally created on Slack, and it now shows up in Microsoft Teams on the right-hand side. And you can see that these two channels are basically a mirror image of each other. So when Tom posted this message at the bottom, in the bottom left, saying having lunch with the CFO around noon, we posted that message into the budget planning channel on Microsoft Teams, and we posted it from Tom. So, so it looks like from Chris's perspective, you can join that channel on Microsoft Teams and can just sit and read those messages, and they look like they're coming from Teams users. The only way you know that Tom is actually a Slack user is because he has a little Slack icon over his avatar. I mentioned that was the process for public channels. In terms of private channels, you just invite a user like you normally would. So you can invite Chris to this private channel with security ops, and we will then receive an API event informing us that Chris has been added to that channel. And so we will then add Chris's Microsoft Teams user account to that channel on the other side. So I'm just going to switch to a demo now to show you a demo between Microsoft Teams and Slack. So on the right-hand side, you have a user called Chris inside Microsoft Teams. And on the left-hand side, you have a user called Tom inside Slack, just like in the slides. So Tom is going to find Chris inside the directory. So I'm going to come down here to direct messages, search for Chris. So remember, Chris is a Microsoft Teams user, right? But I can find Chris inside the Slack directory and send a message saying, hello, this is Tom on Slack. And so Mio is going to receive a copy of that message because we have a user token for Chris. And we're going to deliver that message to Chris from Tom on Microsoft Teams. So Chris is going to reply and say hi from Teams, and you see that message comes across instantly on Slack. So now I'm going to go into the budget planning channel and say hi from Slack in a channel. And then in Microsoft Teams, that message is going to come across into the Teams channel here. So hi in a channel, and I can say this is a threaded reply, and that message is going to get posted back onto the Slack side as a threaded reply. So it looks like a native threaded reply from Slack. So you can see here that this is a kind of native experience for both users on both sides. And if I were to do a thumbs up reaction to a message on Microsoft Teams, then that message will come across there. If I attach a image, for example, then just like you would expect, basically, we're taking a copy of that image and uploading it onto the Microsoft side. There it is. So that's how interoperability works between Slack and Microsoft Teams. And that's what we mean by seamless interoperability, right? Like any user on Microsoft can join the budget planning channel just like they normally would. And any user on Microsoft can send a user to Tom from Microsoft Teams just like they normally would. And we're kind of bridging those messages over onto the other side so that Tom inside Slack can have a fully native experience talking with Chris inside Slack. So that's the native interoperability that we were talking about. So this is my final slide, and then I'm going to pause to see if there's any Q&A. Mio as a company is about 4 years old. We've raised about $12 million. We're currently deployed with some large enterprise customers like Nike and Under Armour. Keurig is also using us both for their internal communication and external federation. We have customers like AMC who have recently set up. We work very closely with our platform partners, so we have a very close relationship with Cisco, for example. More recently, I've started working with Zoom to build a Zoom chat integration, and we'll be working with RingCentral as well, ultimately to add RingCentral Glip to this. And so again, our vision here is really to build a global workplace communications network that connects all companies in the world, regardless of which messaging app they happen to be using. And the technology architecture that we're doing for this is API Federation. So it's this APIization of the world really that has enabled us to, for the first time ever now, to deliver fully native interoperability where Mio is invisible to the end user. That wasn't possible 10 years ago with open standards. It wasn't possible 20 years ago with multi-headed clients. And so we're really using the latest API capabilities of Microsoft Teams and other platforms like Slack and WebEx Teams in order to be able to to make this work. So I'm just going to pause there and see ask Saka if we have any Q&A.
No,
okay.
Still nothing.
No problem, no problem. All right, well, just in closing, I have a couple more slides. I just wanted to, in fact, just one more slide. Just in closing, just wanted to say that everything that we've talked about today is messaging interoperability. And so as a company, we are 100% focused on delivering seamless interoperability between different messaging clients. And so that means direct messaging across platform and channels across platform. But ultimately, in the long run, we also want to try and unify voice and video as well. And so we don't think it makes any sense that that a Microsoft Teams company can't talk to an external company that uses Zoom without one of the sides compromising and using a tool that they prefer not to be using. And so ultimately, we would like to enable cross-platform video chat as well. And cross-platform voice chat as well. I realize is the holy grail, but we feel like end users should be able to choose whatever their preferred tool of choice is and be able to communicate with anyone in the world. If we could pull this off, then I think Microsoft would continue to deliver messages between Microsoft users, and Slack would continue to deliver messages between Slack users. Those are like the local area networks. But anytime anyone on the planet wanted to communicate with anyone else who wasn't using the same app as themselves, which I think would be the vast majority of communication, then Mio would be translating and relaying those messages between the different APIs so that we can completely remove all barriers to communication and all friction. So that is my presentation about Microsoft Teams interoperability with Slack and WebEx Teams and other platforms soon to come. I want to thank you for joining this session. Thank you for your time. Just in closing, I'd like to encourage you to sign up for free at m.io, and feel free to reach out to me directly. My email address is tom@m.io. I'd be happy to give you a private demo, answer any questions you have about security or licensing. Can get you set up with a proof of concept, if that would be helpful. And of course, I'd like to kind of guide you towards the post-session breakouts as well. The URL is available here. But thank you very much for your time, and looking forward to talking with everyone in the breakout sessions.
Thank you, Tom. And if you would like to speak with Tom following this session, you can find him in the session breakout area. So please check the Q&A for the link to join the meeting, and you can leave us the feedback there as well. Thanks, everybody, for watching.
Great. Thanks so much, Saka. Bye-bye.